Now, to be really competent operating with rational numbers and making all the calculations in your head without a calculator, you need to be able to work with fractions and decimals, negative and positive numbers. You need to be able to multiply and divide by fractions and decimals. So there's a few ways you could tackle a question like this. You could work entirely with decimals and change any fractions to decimals, or you could work completely with fractions. Let's have a look at a couple of ways to do it. Now first here we've got a bunch of brackets, so let's look at the inner brackets. We've got negative 2 minus negative 1. So that's negative 2 plus 1, isn't it? So minus 2 plus 1 is minus 1. Now if I just jot that down, in fact let's use another colour, minus 1, that's that whole section. So inside the big brackets here I've got minus 1 times a third. So that gives me minus a third. And now I've tidied up that whole step in one go. Over here I've got divided by. Now let's think. Negative 2 times 0.3. Well, 2 lots of 0.3 is 0.6. And a negative times a positive is a negative. So I've got negative 0.6. Now at this point I need to work out whether I want to work with fractions or decimals. This is nice and simple as a fraction, so it sort of makes sense to convert this to a fraction, doesn't it? So we've got minus a third divided by. Now, converting any decimal to a fraction, it's easy. Every single decimal, if it ends, it's not a recurring one, you just have a look at this column. This is the tenths column. So we've got 6/10 here. Now, as soon as you write that down, you'll probably look at it and think, well, hold on a minute, 6/10, that's the same as 3/5. And you might even write that down first, having done that calculation in your head. Next step, dividing by fractions. Never do it. Times and flip. It's much easier to multiply fractions. And so that's our method, is we multiply by the multiplicative inverse of 3/5, which means the reciprocal, we just turn it upside down and change it to 5/3. Now, if you're not quite sure why that works, or you're maybe struggling to remember why it works, let's just have a little look over on the side here. Don't forget that if you take any number, let's say take a number like 8, if you want to multiply it by a fraction, finding a quarter of 8, that's the same as dividing 8 by 4, isn't it? Okay, exactly the same thing. So if you change division to multiplication, you just have to, and 4 is 4 over 1, flip whatever it is that you're dividing by. So if you don't like doing division, you don't ever have to do it again. You can always multiply, but to make up for it, you need to flip the fraction. Now, next step, when we're multiplying by fractions, the numerator times the numerator is the numerator. Denominator times denominator is denominator. We looked and check if there's any cancelling we can do, and there isn't. So minus 1 times 5 is minus 5, and 3 3s are 9. So we're done.